Would you like some tea, Andy?
I'd love some tea, Bambos.
How are you today?
Looking good, Bambos.
Long time no see, Andy.
Do you know that line from Trading Places?
I haven't seen the movie.
Okay. I say, looking good, Bambos.
And what do I say, Andy?
Feeling good, Andy.
Feeling good, Andy.
No, you need to say it a little bit differently.
Top of the world.
Looking good, Bambos.
Feeling good, Andy.
I'll show it to you on our break. That's one of the 80s.
Are we having a break?
One of the 80s
You
films.
talk like...
No, that's one of the 80s films that you haven't seen yet. But
is it with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
no, I think it's with Eddie Murphy. Trading Places.
Today, guys, myself and this
Asshole
gummy bear next to me, we're gonna talk about surrender. And Andy, we're gonna do that on.
I love it. Taking control of wonderful chaos. Nice.
I've had red eyes the whole day.
Yeah. You know what I find interesting is that a lot of people come into our show when it's just the two of us more than if there's a guest on. Like we have certain people that like those shows more than our guest shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, we're the guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way we began, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought we can't fill 5 days of this.
Yeah, we could.
I'm sure we could.
We could talk about anything, Andy.
We could fill 5 days for sure.
Only I don't know if it's going to be as much fun for us.
Yeah, and how many times am I going to repeat myself? I can only tell the same story 20 times before I realize that I've told that same story already. I kind of assume when I tell the story twice, by the way, the assumption is that people haven't already, like they don't listen to the show anyways. So that's how I've...
People need to hear it twice, 3 times, 4 times,
Yes.
so that it gets through the thick skull that's how it is.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit high energy, guys. We spent the whole day together.
The whole day.
And just moving stuff around.
Moving furniture.
So...
And every year I get older, furniture gets harder to move, right? Like there's, you know, when you're like, you had all the energy in the world, your friends would say, hey, move my house for me. And, you know, after you get to 50, you're like, okay, who am I going to pay to do this for me? And JC says, yes, more often I get more from you two and your reactions. Yeah.
So today, Andy, we're going to talk about a very special subject, surrender.
I like how you preface it. It's very special. We're talking about this subject because of you.
I know.
Yes.
So what comes up for me is since we started the show, surrender always comes up.
Yeah.
Especially with people who follow the dream.
Yeah.
Or succeed. They had some kind of success in life. They had to surrender to the unknown.
Yeah.
Not knowing if what they were focused on, what they were wishing to manifest in this world would actually come to pass.
That's curious. So I see surrender in 2 ways. There's a lot of ways.
That was the way that I was referring to.
But that's the way you're referring to.
Yeah. Because in we also did surrender episode 1.
Yeah.
Where we really talked about...
And it was surrendering to the thing that you had trouble making peace with. It was letting whatever your mental struggle is, letting that just be okay.
Yeah.
Surrendering to that. And you're saying, interesting. So you want to mix it up, because I've often talked about the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
How I see my brain work. Let's speak more from a personal. So I see that when I'm making choices, I'm avoiding something usually, or I'm going to something positively, trying to. And so when you're saying, maybe on the first show, when we said surrender, it was surrendering to the negative. And now you're saying, Andy, how is it if we looked at this show a little differently? This is that I'm just paraphrasing. And how about if you surrender to the positive? And the positive being the unknown that you trust will bring you somewhere, but you're not actually sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always curious because as a business owner, my dream was to be a photographer.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm a photographer. I'm succeeding, but it hasn't always been easy because trying to generate a business from photography has had its challenges.
Yeah.
And I'm still fucking standing.
Yeah.
But when I take that word surrender, like, do I give myself a week off, which I've done?
Okay.
like to what degree does one, and I'm talking about myself now, does Bambos keep hacking at his craft? Because we also had a show, we've also had talks like, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that, but my heart is not there.
But I have this weird feeling when you use the word surrender.
Yeah.
I think we have to define it, because I see the word you're using and I confuse it with other words. Like surrender, I hear often, this happened some time ago, not more recently. When you use the word surrender, I hear you saying, when I give up. Because giving up, if I stay a week in bed and surrender, you're saying I'm surrendering to the feeling, or not. Will it help me?
Well, I would say trying to make things happen and just being on that run. I wouldn't say give up, because give up will be the other flip. But to what degree do you loosen up the reins?
Yes.
And do you loosen up the reins?
Okay, and then I would, in my languaging of what you've said, I say, where do I welcome the unfolding? That's what I would call it.
Where do I welcome the unfolding?
Yeah. Okay. So I've often found that in my life, when I'm not in the past, maybe it'll happen again, but in the past, I know it from my strong experience. When things weren't going well, I worked harder.
Yeah.
And I pushed. And what I noticed when I pushed is that it didn't necessarily go any better. In fact, many times I would be exhausted and it wouldn't go any better. So I'd be worse off in the end. And then what was weird was, in some cases, all it needed was a little bit of time. And then things work themselves out. But I couldn't trust in time because I was too fearful. What am I going to do? What if I don't have a job? What if I lose the money? All the fear.
Yeah.
So that came. So when I would say, in that case, what surrender would have meant and has meant to me now, when I see less work, I say, oh, apparently this isn't the time that this is going to happen. And there's not a fear that overcomes me. There's a surrendering to, this is the situation I'm now in. That's how I feel the word surrender in that context. And I'm wondering how it is when you connect that to is that what you thought when I said it, or is it different than what you had in mind?
It would be different.
Okay.
In the context of when it's come up in our shows with our guests, is people saying no to a safe life and all of a sudden stepping into the unknown. And that takes a certain surrender. That's one.
Now, I want to slow down. I don't know if I would use this word surrender there.
What would you take?
I don't know yet. But when you say it...
Risk. I'm loving this show already.
Really?
Yeah, it feels like our drive today.
Yeah.
That's how we were talking today.
It's how we talk all the time. Is it surrender? I'm trying to feel into myself. I guess it is surrender. But it feels like it's... the reason why I think I resist is because you're bringing it forward as a business context, and I see it as everything in my life, not just the business context. Business is even small part of my life in the thought. So when I'm not certain and I allow myself to feel at peace, when I surrender to a situation, then it could be a business situation or personal situation or any situation. And in your case, when you talk about this, I am going to allow myself to become a photographer. I have no experience. I have no clients. I don't have any necessarily chance that I can see at this moment. And yet I'm going to allow it to unfold. I'm going to surrender and let the journey guide me.
I didn't surrender. That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm contesting the word in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you distinguish? Because let's say for the following this, I could see a context where I could use the word surrender. I could use the word surrender for what you did.
We're having the show today because you have, in our shows, talked about surrender in this context with people.
Yes.
And I've seen you being in awe of the word surrender. And as far as I'm concerned, everything that I have managed to create in my life has been from a lot of hard work. I never saw myself surrendering to, okay, I'm going to just trust this unknown process.
Bolalong makes a nice comment. I hear the word surrendered used by people who believe in fate.
Like,
by the way, I already have an answer to what you said. If you want to continue, you can. But I feel what I mean when I say since you've used this context back, shared it towards me.
Yeah.
I've said on a lot of shows, I distinguish between content, what I do, and process, how I do it.
What I do and how I do it.
What I do and how I do it. The what I do is where I see people get really stuck. Like they get really stuck. Like, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to do this. And it's like a to-do list, and I'm always running behind, and I've never gone fast enough. So that's what I broadly, in my own terminology, I haven't, created monopoly on this. I call that content. And then on the other side, I see the process, and the process is what I call the unfolding. And what I would say is I surrender to the process. So an example of this would be the book, the second book especially, actually both books. I worked my ass off to get it ready, to prepare, to invite support, to send out books ahead, to talk to my publisher, to get a publicist. So one would not say that I didn't do a lot. And yet I still surrendered to the process.
Because as you were doing, did you find the doing joyful?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you were doing, you were free of outcome.
I was free of outcome. And what I saw was that the possibilities, like Buzzworthy comes in. Andy, do you want to do 20 articles in our, on this platform? There could be, at least a few 100,000 people with their eyes on those articles.
Yeah.
So now I've got, just because I've surrendered and I'm welcoming in whatever comes up, and I'm showing gratitude for whatever it does, and I'm continually doing and working, so people are supporting me. But what I wouldn't say is that I was forcing anything to exist. I would say I surrendered, but what surrender does not mean to me is not to do. I'm in flow, and I'm observing what is working well, what isn't working, and I adapt and I move. So surrender has no connection with me of not doing anything, which would be nice, because even with Bolalong's comment is that he said he hears the word surrender used by people who believe in fate. And I would say, maybe to be more specific, I surrender to the process. I don't decide how it unfolds. The more I try to control it, the more constricted I get, the less flexible I get, the more constrained I am, because I can't be creative anymore.
You create a lot of tension.
And you create a lot of tension. So and so when I surrender to the process, what I'm surrendering to is whatever shows up that makes sense at this moment, given everything I'm doing and the feeling of where I want to be. But I'm not even going to force where I want to be, because a lot of times what I found is that you'll end up much further when people move and take you in directions that you wouldn't have anticipated. Like, you use the feedback to give you another sense of what's possible.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by surrender in that context, at least. And so surrendering to the process, I guess, would be a more accurate wording for what I'm actually pointing at when I say that in that context. And there's a statement we don't have. I'm not sure who. Ousia, you know this?
No.
I like the name.
It means substance in Greek.
Oh, beautiful. Surrender is more like an inner core relaxation to me. And I would agree with Ousia. It would be, as soon as I impose where it has to be, that's where I've lost connection in myself. So when I surrender to the process, I'm sort of saying, I'm going to do all the stuff I was going to do anyways, but now I'm just going to let it unfold. And when it doesn't move the way I might have liked, I don't say, oh shit, this is screwing up. I say, okay, what is it telling me? What am I learning from this experience? And so in that way, I see you a lot about surrender.
You?
Yeah. Look at the cold emails you sent out.
Yeah.
So for the record, Bambos sent me an email 2 weeks ago. Said, can you rewrite it for me? I used his idea and I rewrote it not really all that well. And then it went to people and they said they were kind of offended by it, which I thought was kind of amusing. But
yeah.
But what happened is you surrendered. You didn't even look over it. I mean, you didn't do a real correction on my email.
No.
You just sent it. Said, let's see what happens. That's surrendering. And then you got the crap responses like, this is not a nice, Bambos, you're whatever, manipulative or whatever it is, what they said you were. And then you said, oh, okay, like, how can I change this so that it works? But in no process did you say, I expect this outcome when I send this out. You allowed it to unfold and you adapted. So that's the quality that I'm looking at. And you stayed connected the whole way through it. Even when I felt bad, because you're sending out emails I rewrote and then you're getting bad replies. You didn't even say, Andy, like, oh my God, what did you do? You're like laughing. Exactly. So that's surrender.
Okay. Do you know 1 week, 2 weeks before the cold emailing process started for me, I was getting to a point of, I haven't had work for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Fear.
And I wanted to do all the cold emailing, but the space where I was in stress and fear, and I was wanting to take, like I wasn't looking how I can, and I knew any relationship that I create on that base is not going to work.
Yeah.
So I took that week off and I spent it doing this workshop from Peter Kooning, the illusion of money, and just looking to find peace with whatever I projected onto money.
Yeah.
And in the end, it would come to, I am at peace with and without money. I am successful with and without money.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much to tell myself a positive story, but just to find that groundedness. And then I saw that week of doing the cold emails. I did experience it as a fun experience. And I felt that I had more control over the process.
Yeah.
Which was funny. And I trusted the process. But I kind of told myself, there's probably not going to be any work from this now. But I'm planting seeds.
And that would be what I would define as an act of surrender. Even you not sending out the emails when you didn't feel well is surrendering. If you had sent them out, then you would have done it under stress and duress, and you would have been forcing it. And you didn't force it. You said, no, this isn't it. I'm going to go back to where I need to find groundedness and find my connection. And then from there, I send out again.
Yeah, I'm kind of...
So that's the process.
So again. I was trying to... I never really grasped to what capacity I can surrender in these situations. So hearing you speak now, I'm getting a reference for where it shows up in my life.
Yeah, I've often heard you use surrender meaning I'm going to stop doing stuff, which is never what I think when I think of surrender.
Oh, like give me
that I would use the word giving up.
So like what?
Well, in the past, when we've talked about certain subjects, sometimes you've said, Andy, but that's like surrendering is like giving up. You didn't use maybe the word giving up, but I would always be like, no, it's not giving up. It's allowing it to unfold And that doesn't mean giving up. It means it's a state of mind. It's a connected space. Like, yeah, things are evolving and they're moving.
So
Yeah.
So let me give some context to this. In the past, would have been in situations where I was in financial trouble.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to surrender to something when in 2 weeks you need to pay the bills and you don't have much on your account, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, that's the question, is how do you surrender to that?
So I'm going to link this now into my own process.
Yeah, please.
So every day, my morning rituals and putting myself in the rain, in the cold, and just exposing myself to the harshness of the elements of nature. I've started to see that part of me doing that is to kind of allow that level of discomfort in a way of surrendering to it and embracing it.
Yeah. I see you surrender to that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you put yourself in a really, really tough physical situation, and then you make peace with it. You find ways to pull inside energy to actually find a resolve or calm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that all the time. It's interesting. Bolalang, he really wrote quite the metaphor, what I would really write, and I played the
if
saxophone.
life is like a jazz jam session that is surrendering.
Yeah.
You know the objective, but you don't know how it looks like until it happens.
Yeah. That really feels like it. Bolalang stated it exceptionally well. If life is like a jazz jam session, that is surrendering. You know the objective, but you don't know how it looks like until it happens.
Yeah.
And that's sort of it's funny, Bolalang, Bambos and I had a discussion today around this very subject in the car. Do you remember?
No.
Bolalang, we were talking, and I told you there was a situation, and we're not going to talk about it on air, but there was a situation in your life that I said, oh, I can see this situation coming up. It was with your ex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I said, oh, I can imagine that this might happen.
You can talk about it.
Okay. So I don't want to assume things. Basically, what I know is that this is all from the outside perspective, is I've seen in the relationship with you and your ex, to some degree, you've been vilified in that relationship.
Yeah.
You've been made out to be this bad man.
Yeah.
And what I find is that when anyone vilifies, goes into that the persecutor role, then all of a sudden, you being on this show, sharing that it's hard for you, sharing that you're struggling sometimes, it's maybe your daughter's birthday, and you're feeling like it's hard not to be able to, reach out and tell her you love her. So all that's going on. And I said, wow, if your ex catches wind of this, it may not be easy for her.
You mean by watching the show?
By watching it, by hearing it from another person, because it derails her narrative. You can't be a jerk anymore. And to some degree, when you project onto a person, the one thing you need is for that story to remain solid. Because if it gets undermined, because you now have people out there that say, oh, Bambos isn't that bad a guy, and oh, he's kind of sweet, and he mentioned it on a show. Like, I was like, oh God, as soon as she hears that you're maybe sharing about your life on the show, she won't be happy with that, because you might get support from people emotionally. Mm-hmm. And I laughed and said to you, oh, wow, I could imagine someday she might even write you and say, listen, I prefer you not discussing anything regarding me or our daughter on the show. And so I laughed, because it's like, oh yeah, that I just sort of played that out of my head. And then I laughed because I spent a moment. And for me, whenever I have a moment like that, I always like to have an anchor for, oh, how would I respond to it in a way that connects me? And then it actually disappears from my head. So as you heard me in the car, I said, oh, if she were ever to come to me and say, I want that you not talk about it on the show, like, oh, I already know what I would say. And then, like Bolalang just mentioned, oh, I have one reference for how I might react, or it doesn't mean I will. But now, since I've like calmed that voice in my head, it just the thought disappears. And that's how I at least work. I see my own thought processes work, because I need at least one way to resolve it so that I can let it go out of my brain. And then I laughed and told you, oh, wow, I see that is a need for me to control.
Yeah.
Yeah. which is funny. That discovery was also part of that, of course. Yeah. So yeah, that was it. But yeah, and so I guess getting to the point again is we do have, as Bolalong writes here, an objective in mind. We do have an objective, but it may not be so clear that when another instrument or another player or a different tone or a different jazz riff enters, that we don't play a whole different song. And I think that's where life really becomes beautiful. And that would be surrendering to the process. And nothing is more quintessential that than a jazz group who's just playing off each other. Yeah. So that would be how I would see surrender in the context that we didn't been discussing. Yeah.
I think we're done.
Yeah. It would be nice to, because this goes to a meta level thing. When I'm coaching people, I would say maybe 5% of the people that I'm coaching understand what I've just said as a practice in how they live and not as a concept. So the understanding that content and process are different is one thing. Actually doing it in life is a wholly another thing. It would be understanding versus embodiment. And I think the beauty of like the criteria that I see is it's when one is tested with their triggers, do they respond defensively or offensively, right? Fight or flight, or do they default to process? And it takes some work. And I see surrender is the process for me.
Surrender is the process.
Andy, you're an asshole. Try it.
I already know what you're going to say.
No. I'm going to do all different versions of it.
Andy, you're a dick.
Why do you say that? That's not nice. So there's the defensive. Try again.
Andy, you're such a dick.
You're a fucking dick. There's the offensive. Okay. So there's the two options. Now try the third.
Andy, stop being a dick.
What makes you say that? So that's the process.
Yeah.
And I think what I've found is in the process response, everything unfolds. You understand more at the end because you're not defending or trying to make a point. And there's just understanding. It's nice because Bolalong is on. And I've had a few conversations with Bolalong over the last weeks or months when we just chatted here and there. And Bolalong is often, he likes to share his discoveries and what he finds and what he understands.
Yeah.
Which I love, of course. And there were these times when I was anxious for him, right? Because I project onto Bolalong as well, was that he may be reacting as opposed to inquiring so that the process would unfold. And then the other person may meet him in this dialogue, right? That's the reason why I got triggered sometimes when he used the word argument. He says, I like arguments. And then I understand, I like arguments as well, because when he uses the word arguments, I use the word dialogue. And in that way, yeah, just we're matching our vernacular.
Okay, so it's same thing, different words.
Same thing, different words. But I would have never discovered that if I told him he was wrong. That's my whole point.
You told him he was wrong?
No, if I had told him he was wrong, I would have never discovered that we use different words for the same thing. And that's where I see people lose each other.
So you asked him, what makes you say that?
Yeah, I said, well, what do you understand out of the word? And remember in the show we did with him, I even acted it out. I said, Bolalong, you're wrong. And then he said, Andy, but I would never respond at that point because it's now emotional. And I laughed and said, oh, now we agree again, because that's my whole point. Why would you respond to anyone who's actively not wanting to understand you? So that's where, or you and I discussed it as well in the car earlier today when you said to me, Andy, I was in this situation with somebody, we spoke, and they didn't have a question.
Yeah.
And you remember in the past, you would have tried to convince them that there was something that they were missing. But now you're just like, okay, so apparently there's no question. Why would I push them to have a question around something that they don't have a question? That would just be something I need.
Yeah.
And that was an example of,
I saw that my life is much more at peace when I live in this way.
Yeah. And imagine, and that would be surrender for me. You surrender to the process.
Okay.
Because the process is, and this is weird, because you would almost think the process is I do not act if the individual doesn't have a question. That doesn't mean you might not ask if they have a question. You might say, hey, are you even maybe curious what might be different in your argument? You could even ask. That would still be a question. But the thing is that once that exists, you surrender and say, okay, there's nothing here for me to change or to fix or to improve. That's the surrender. What was your life like before that? Like, detail it. Give me a feeling for what it was like in words to feel before you understood that.
In relationships, there will be blame. There will be taking personally.
Yep.
A lot of emotion. And holding on to a story which just wasn't serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive maybe, but to not engage because there's not a question is surrendering to the fact that there's nothing to achieve here.
Yeah. And, but let's say it's in a way of being in a relationship with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Then for me comes also the question, okay, are the conditions here for me to want to be in a relationship with this person?
Sure.
Because if there's no space to explore and go deep, then for me, it will be a no.
Yeah, but you could always...
But how to do that without alienating them or making them feel bad.
And then that's technique and skills come in. That's where you'd say, hey, I really like our talks. And I see sometimes I struggle when we have these sort of talks. Would you be open to having some discussions there? How would you feel about looking at another way of engaging? Would that work for you? And that's where I see relationships either begin to get closer or they clearly just aren't going to work because you can't find when it comes to relationships, the key criteria to a good relationship lasting over a very long time is that the foundation of it is that we can always have a dialogue when we have a difference of opinion or thought.
Yeah.
Like if that doesn't exist, then it's just horror for everybody.
Yeah. I love the expression, how can we find ways to celebrate our differences?
Yeah. And that way, if you're looking for the perfect person, then, you're probably going to be alone for a long time. If you're looking for someone that regardless of what the challenge is, we can address it, then you have a better shot for sure. Yeah.
Drop the mic, Andy. Drop the mic. Not like that.
You know what I like though? That the word surrender in your vernacular wording in how you speak and thought and it was very much connected to giving up. When not giving up completely, but like letting go of the reins.
Yeah, I wasn't understanding. I wasn't understanding. I couldn't feel it. Like, what does surrender mean?
Does it feel? Can you connect to it now, or is it still logical?
Because now I have a reference. Because I was like, oh yeah, that last week I did it like this, and the week after that, so definitely.
Yeah, I think you surrender a lot from my experience of you.
You are right. Much, and I know that from the past. In the past, I would have a very strong opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, of things and people.
Of things and ideas of how things should be.
Yeah.
And
then if it wasn't that way, you'd go to the fitness center and you'd tell everybody how they were using their fitness equipment incorrectly.
I told one person.
No. You would tell a lot of people.
One person. You caught that one moment you made.
No, I didn't hear it from our time together. I heard it more from our mutual friend said he could never work out with you because you were spending all your time correcting others.
Correcting him.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I would not want to hang out with me in the gym.
But it doesn't really matter. But my point being is that now you're just present,
Yeah.
and that's a very different experience. That is surrender.
Was
Yeah.
it that bad?
You were pretty
Jesus
bad.
fucking Christ.
I mean, Bambos, let's look at you on the street walking down talking to women. You would talk to 5 to 6 women a day, sort of thing.
More.
Yeah, just on the street, like that. You were actively. It was like an addiction. It wasn't like it was.
It was an addiction.
And so for you to not allow that to happen was also surrendering.
So I wanna time out this moment. If anyone out there might be projecting on how we're talking, you have to go 2 shows back and watch our relationship so you can understand what's going on now.
Oh, really? Do you think it sounds bad?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, shit.
But it's good to watch that show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because we're going back to the mentoring part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be those moments when you're mentoring another individual and they're not allowing themselves to acknowledge who they really were because they might be anxious. Someone's out there listening that might project onto them. And then, oh my God, then all of a sudden you lose the opportunity to put like a kind of a level on that one. Say, I'm not that person, but I love that person because that's who he was then.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean who I am. That's who I am today. Yeah. But the degree to which you resist that is where you're not you, but we're still stuck.
Well said.
Yeah. So, So I guess my point was, I see a lot of surrender in you when situations arise, problems come up. For instance, the one you mentioned earlier, where you said, "Hey, I didn't have the income, and I was going to write from fear, and I didn't." That was surrender. To do and write would not have been surrendering. It would have been doing what you always did out of fear. So you stopped the fear reaction, and you found some inner peace.
Yeah,
that's where. And we had that surrender is more like an inner core relaxation to me. That was nicely said. By the way, for anyone who may be watching and commenting on the Andy Chalif live, please switch over to the
Wonderful Chaos
live, where we also stream, because we can see your comments there. A lot of shows I've seen, comments have been written onto the Andy Chalif that we haven't seen till much later. And there were some really nice comments in the past. I don't know if you ever see that?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes if I go on your wall to stalk you.
Yeah, I can have a quick look just in case there has been someone that has written that, just to see if there's something that that would be nice to pick up on. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the way we do the show is also very surrendered.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like I hear a lot of people in my network starting podcasts, and they're not live streaming, so they really look to make it perfect, and they have an intention to make a business out of it.
Yeah.
And we didn't have such an intention. It's like, let's just start, since we're talking like this anyway.
Yeah.
Let's allow the world to peek into how we
interact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that we have shows where a guest doesn't show up and we just let it unfold immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't see those. I see those shows I often like more than a planned show, because in the way it's like, now whatever is in that very moment most interesting is what we talk about.
Or not. We the last time you and me, we sat in silence.
Yeah.
What was it? The Art of Silence?
Yeah. I think you said, if there isn't anything relevant to say, then let's not speak. And then I always think to myself, I don't know if there's anything honestly that's relevant to speak. So if you did that for every show, we would just have it would be a silent retreat.
Silent 60 minutes.
Us looking in the camera and just saying, hey. Nothing. We wouldn't say hey, of course.
Oh, man.
So, Bolalang, you're out there often listening. Is there anything that comes up as a question? I often enjoy getting your questions, or anybody else for that matter.
That means we've run out of content, guys.
No, we can make some stuff up. I mean, I have a lot. Surrender is such a big topic that we could really go.
I think your relationship with Rani is very surrendered.
And what makes you, what do you see that makes you say that?
Well, In your dynamics, I
Mm-hmm.
think in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's so many potential arguments that could have been born from different situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like you today taking the closet,
Yeah.
knowing that she likes the closet, but you
Yeah.
did it. And I know that if anything would come up, you have a beautiful way of navigating that, or you both have that understanding between you. Like it's not, you didn't do it out of spite. It's
No.
like, or when she says, I'm going to take you for a walk,
Yeah.
or when she tries to manage you,
Yeah. Which she does a lot.
or she does a lot. And still, you don't, what I see in you as a man, you don't like feel less of a man. You just feel, okay.
That's what she is or what she needs.
Yeah.
I mean, but I will tell her more recently, babe, the control thing, let's slow that down a little bit, you know? And I think she likes that because
I love that you say that to her. Nice.
she'll say, am I getting more control? Like she'll ask the question then. And then often I won't I won't try to make a point. It's not winning an argument forever. It's like, no, like sometimes when you're in this state, you'll need a little bit more. Because what I noticed is that like the fact that like work can be complicated because she's got a pretty intense sort of job. There's things in her dynamic she can't necessarily control at work. So in that way, what she can't control there, I'll see she wants to control in the house a bit more, right? I can feel the need to have one area in my life where I have some degree of control.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. But in that way, when somebody is more forthcoming around what they need, then I also feel more of a desire to support it because it's not coming from fear and anxiety and that thing. It's coming from a real genuine place of, this is what I need. Bowl along
that
again.
Control thing is a woman thing, I suppose. They do it from time to time.
Nice, Bowl along. I see. Bowl along told me that his wife doesn't watch the show, so he can say whatever he wants. He's not going to get in trouble.
Oh shit! I think we're gonna get #MeToo on this one.
Yes, and Bowl along has some daughters as well. I'd like to see if they're controlling as well, if they picked up any of that. Yeah. But the original surrender, by the way, if we go back to the surrender that we had on our first show, it was the title of that show was Surrendering to Life. And I said, and I still say, that surrendering is one of the hardest things to do it was one of the hardest things for me to do in my emotional path, is not to think I could control my future, is when I stopped trying to figure it out before I did it. And I started letting it unfold. So a great example would be like when I went to Vienna, Austria. I was.
Can you give a more recent example?
Oh,
I've heard that example so many times.
Have you?
Yeah.
The resumes?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's in the book as well.
Give me something more recent.
I think the book with the release of The Wounded Healer.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how I wanted to promote it. And I did know that I wanted it to do well. So I did have an objective. I had an idea, but I didn't know how to do that. So what I did was I surrendered and said, there are these services. You can pay $500 and get number one on Amazon. Like, it's the most absurd thing. It takes away all the credibility of what that really means. If you can pay $500 and have some Indian company get you to the top. It literally, it's an Indian company. And what I said was, you know what? I don't care if they can do that. I would rather connect with the people who enjoyed the first book, send them a copy and ask them if they do me a favor and purchase a book on the launch day and leave a review after they read it. And it felt like, in my case, a surrender, because it was like, and I remember laughing. I had a discussion with Ronnie. She said, Andy, you're sending this book out to all these people. Why would they buy the book if you've already sent it to them? And I laughed, said, babe, if they didn't buy a book, it's also okay. It's the point is that this is the way I want my book to live in the world, is by sharing it with people that I care and love about, that have shown some appreciation of an earlier work, and let them support it. And there was the feeling, I don't know where the book will go, but I'll let them decide for me and with me how far it evolves.
Nice.
So it felt like a full surrender to that. And then, with my friend Anthony Iliano, who was on the show, who did the show I Can't Say No, he appreciated my work so much. He said, Andy, we're going to run 20 stories from the book on Buzzworthy. That was another surrender, because I didn't really know what I was going to do, and I was a bit anxious. But I said, you know what? Let's do it. And so I found a graphic artist in Brazil who made 20 incredibly beautiful artworks, and all of those are on the top of each one of these archetypes.
You've been posting them also.
Yeah. So for me, the whole second book was a surrender to whatever. Bowl Along was a great example, right? There was no page for the book until Bowl Along said, hey, I made a page because I wanted to say your book was one of my favorites. So because of Bowl Along's work, he basically he created a page. So I got a book page because of somebody who enjoyed the book, who created a page so that they could like the book on Facebook. Another example of just the surrender is that Bowl Along also said on one of our shows, I don't know if you remember it, he said, we got to create a hashtag for this. And then he was the one who wrote hashtag and it's fucking great. I believe he was the one who wrote it on the show.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, there's no way that and it's fucking great's going to work.
And it works.
And it works. And the group has 300 or 400, I don't know, has a lot of people there now sharing these.
Hasn't been on for long, right?
No. And that for me all unfolded only because I let the energy, and the show as well, of course, is part of that. And that just all unfolded because of the surrender. Now, it got number one on Buzzworthy. I mean, it was number one in the US in the self-help for like at least 2 days. Like, how the hell does that happen? Like, that's just 400 copies in a day. So that for me was an act of surrender, and that's what happened. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
And the humor was that now in retrospect, I laugh because I was telling Ronnie, what's the first thing the brain does after it's gone through process? It often says, oh, but I didn't do this and I didn't do that and I didn't. So you start to look at all the things that it could have done.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get invited by Oprah to be on her sofa, whatever the absurdist thing is.
So by the way, if anyone knows opera.
Yeah, we want to send her the book. So that's what the brain does. It hijacks whatever the beautiful experience is and says, yeah, but you didn't achieve these things. So that's where the loving of the surrender comes back in again. And it's fucking great practice where you say, oh, I thought this book was going to do better than even it had done. And it's fucking great. There's that again is a surrender to the situation I find myself in.
Nice.
And it's fucking great practice is really a surrender, right? That is a surrendering practice. So yeah, that's a little bit of a more recent example of how I've let things unfold.
End of the show, we're going to announce a workshop that Andy's doing on Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday.
But we'll announce it at the end. It has to do with and it's fucking great.
Yeah. And I believe that through each experience, I learn new things, and then that allows me and informs me, like we said earlier, to what the next step would be, which is why the book by Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, was really, I found a fantastic book around how life, when you take the control away and just let it evolve and you start to see what happens as a process. There's a beauty in that once you tune into it, you almost never want it to be otherwise, because you see how quick you can get stuck again. Yeah. Yeah.
He had trouble with the FBI.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was in the book.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
You had trouble with the belasting.
Yeah. Years of my life. You don't want to work in several countries. All of a sudden, everyone wants your money. That's the point. No one can agree.
Borderline has a nice.
That's nice. So there's a relationship between acceptance and surrender. I would say yes.
Yeah, it feels like
For me, I found it. I think it goes a little bit back to surrendering in my mind.
I would say you can't surrender if you don't accept.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah. You can't surrender if you don't accept.
Because once you accept, you can even surrender to whatever the pain is that you've been avoiding when you didn't accept it, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking of a friend that died beginning of the year, and it went really quickly. The moment I just made peace with acceptance, I could just feel the pain and the love, actually.
Yeah. That's nice.
Depends on the context.
This is nice. But Juliet, she may have, I don't know if Juliet, you were here earlier on the show, but acceptance doesn't mean giving in. And that was the point that we spoke about quite a bit in the early, where Bambos and I were a little bit off of one another, where
we're still trying to figure out how to talk about the subject.
Yeah. Because we've talked about it a lot, but there was the idea that surrender would imply giving in or giving up, where it actually, in my mind, would be, and I use the word and I'll say it again, surrendering to the process, how things unfold and not being able to control it. But as Bolalong also added to the talk, which I thought was really beautiful, was that he said, where was he said? What did he say? I want to take his words exactly.
This one.
Yeah. It's where you know the objective, but you don't know how it looks like until it happens. Yeah. Which means you continue to do, and you allow whatever the feedback is to guide you forward. Yeah.
Would you say, something came up as a resistance in me.
Oh, wow.
Is when I had a friend or acquaintance who always would say, I live in the path of less resistance. And it's so easy to say that, but in a way, they use that as an excuse never to do things.
You know what I heard when you said it? I heard avoidance.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I live in the path of least resistance. I live in avoidance. Not necessarily. I can't say that true.
I think it has to do, it has to do with the intention of how someone says it.
Yeah. And in your case, you heard a nuance in there that was he was avoiding. Because I follow the path of least resistance most of the time, but I do it principally and not necessarily. For example, like I tell you, I don't have discussions with people that aren't open to a discussion.
Yeah, but you do that also because...
But you could say that that's a path of least resistance. Yeah. Why would I expend the energy if there's no benefit? So there is some degree of it, but the intention is not to avoid. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of a headache if you are having a conversation with someone and you spend they're defending themselves the whole time, trying to convince you of their reality.
And you're trying to convince them of your reality.
Or you're staying open to explore, but you're not being met there.
It could be, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that happens as well, of course. Would you be willing to have a look into how I see things? And then if they have no desire, then, Wow, Bolalong's bringing in some big references today.
Bruce Lee lived in a life of less resistance. He would tell people he is like water and he flows.
Have you seen the beautiful videos from him?
Yeah.
Oh, his videos are so... Yeah, that's really what life feels like. In the process world, not in the content world, is that you're really allowing the thing that comes towards you to immerse you so that you can move around it and through it, And I mean, a great example of that would be like COVID, right? How do you adapt to something which has such an impact on your life in a way that it doesn't like stop you, but you adapt to it? We adapted by doing this show. 135 of these things that only exist because COVID happened, right? So in that way, that was our adaptation to a situation that wasn't of our making, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4.5 minutes, Mr. Shalev.
Nice.
Is there something in your life that is a challenge to surrender to, or that you have found challenging to surrender to, or you're anticipating?
I mean, the thing that I've said the biggest lifelong surrender is death.
Yeah.
The surrender to not identified. The letting go of all things that attach me.
Well, a few weeks ago, you were ready to go. When you were sick.
Well, yeah, I was ready to go.
And even though you were moaning like a...
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, you never know until you're in that moment.
Yeah.
But I find that, my life today is, am I ready to surrender to death at any moment? Is there anything in me that says, oh, no, I'm resisting, this can't be, I have to, like, because I think how insignificant is all of this? Insignificant, right? I've seen a lot of people go into their heads and abstract it so far that they no longer live. So I'm not talking about that abstraction, but it's the polarity. It's totally absurd, and yet it's so honest and real and serious. And can you hold those both, take them seriously and hold them lightly, both sides of the paradox? And I'd say on the one of like death, I've found more and more peace with it as I've gotten older, and as I've made peace with the idea that actually this time here is actually, I would almost call it a natural process, and it unfolds in a way that I don't control, and nor do I have to. And I felt a lot more of that in my life as I was younger. Fear of death.
Yeah.
If anything, I think people around me are a little bit more anxious, that I do feel a sense of peace with it, because I feel like, are you preparing to die? Do you want to leave? And in a way, I don't say I want to leave. Hanging out would be fine, but there's a beauty in just the allowing it to be okay. It's all okay. So yeah, that's the bigger surrender. How about for you?
What was my question?
Your question is, where in your life, if anywhere, have you found it harder to surrender?
In the future will be for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like creating that space to share with someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would your life look like if you were to surrender to that?
I just replied from the mind, but like when I feel into it, I feel I'm at peace with, just because I know my boundaries and what I can say yes to and what I can say no to, then I'm pretty sure when the moment arises, I know what the full yes and the full no is.
Yeah.
With the space to explore, of course.
I would like more discussions on that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think there's a degree to which you will see things in a person that you already assess will mean that it'll be a bad relationship. So there's an aspect which doesn't get to unfold. That's my projection onto you.
That's what I said
just
now, with space to explore.
Oh, good. Okay. I guess what I was understanding was under the condition that they meet all of my requirements ahead of time.
No.
Then yeah,
It's like I have a vision of what I want,
yeah.
but I'm also not arrogant to think that life will give me whatever I need.
Okay. Yeah.
But thank you.
I was thinking to myself, by the time you get to the point where you would surrender, you'd already have to have it such a level of perfection, you'd never be able to find that person anyways. Oh, beautiful. We're at the top of our hour.
Indeed.
JC says, don't fall prey to failed expectations. Surrender to your present reality. Nice. Whose books are you reading, JC? JC sent me a beautiful picture, by the way. It was a picture of, he was reading The Wounded Healer, and underneath it, it was like a beginner's guide to Zen. You don't know, I didn't ever told you I saw that book underneath The Wounded Healer, which I thought was very beautiful. So that's it for today, Bam. You have anything else?
So, announced tomorrow evening?
Tomorrow evening. You mean Wednesday evening?
Did you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, Wednesday evening.
Wednesday evening, as part of the Wounded Healer launch, I've been offering 4 free sessions for people to join. It's 90 minutes.
This will be the third one.
This will be the third one. There'll be 4 altogether. Maybe we'll add a 5th because there has been quite some demand. And basically, we go through the main practice that's used in the book, the hashtag and it's fucking great, which is also a group on Facebook. If you look for the group hashtag and it's fucking great, all written together, you get a chance to see where people take areas they're having trouble with and and making peace with them.
Yeah.
Bambos is going to write that in as we speak. Hashtag and it's fucking great. Yeah. It's really a nice session, and you get a chance to connect with people you don't know and practice
and it's on Zoom. Where can people find it, Andy Shalev?
It's on Zoom. If you go to any of the sites, it's on the event pages. It's even on the Wonderful Chaos event page
on Facebook.
Yeah. And for this week, Bambos, we've got some upcoming shows coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. We have a Married Man Survival Guide with Chris Gorell.
Yeah, we've had him on the show twice. This is the 3rd show with him.
Yeah, it means we like him.
Yes. We've got I've got cerebral palsy with Win, and she's on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we have Hand in Hand Parenting with Patty Wiffler. She's been doing parenting courses and mentoring parents for several decades. On Facebook, she's got over 300,000 followers, just telling parents how to raise their kids.
And I know the Friday show, you're excited. I'm a private investigator.
Yeah, I am a private investigator.
I already know what kind of questions you want to know.
What, you really? What,
yeah.
I don't even know what I want to know. I'm glad you know that what I'm going to...
Like you go for so tell us the time when the wife hired you to follow the husband or vice versa.
I'd be curious. I don't know if that's, I'd want to know if they ever caught anyone in a sexual act. Was she able to record anything? Those would be the kind of, I want the salacious stuff, and we're doing all of this, Bambos. Where are we doing this?
I have no idea, Andy.
On Wonderful Chaos. And we like it that way. Bye-bye.